Hi, Zizaran here with another episode of PoE University, and today we are going to be guest coached by Steelmage, who's going to give you league start tips and tricks for the upcoming 3.20 league. So I'm going to take a backseat, help click the slides like assisting a teacher, and yeah, I'm excited to see what Steelmage has to teach us. So good luck!
Thanks, sis. Whew.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. I see what you did there. All right. So today Sis has asked me to come on and just talk about some tips and tricks for League Start. I am Professor Stormage. Hello. Um, so moving on to introductions. So I'll let you click. So today what we'll be talking about is League and build choice. Should you actually bother practicing? I know I don't. Filter tips, the day 1 to 2 progressions. That's going to be like the meat and bones of the tips that I have today. Some early gearing advice from me, and then just briefly mentioning the new league mechanic, because that's obviously the new variable introduced this league. So, we'll jump into the first slide. So, build and league choice. So, in my opinion, so obviously, this is from my point of view. I should clarify that these are what I think about when I think about league starting and my thought process and what goes into it. But your league choice should reflect your goals, how long you have to play the league, what you want to accomplish. So, do you want to do Ubers? Do you want to do bosses? Do you want to just get through the atlas, do some maps, get through the campaign, just have fun with the build? Whatever goal you have, your league and your build should reflect that. So if you have a lot of time, if you're ambitious, you might do it as a hardcore. If you're just looking to, like I said, just maybe get through the atlas, maybe kill a boss, and you don't want to stress too much, SC trade's probably perfect. But that being said, in terms of builds, what I like to do when I'm looking for builds, and I imagine a lot of people going through this right now, trying to pick a build, I like to get inspiration, right, from other content creators. So you've got YouTube, like Ziz here. You've got streamers. So, you've got Waggle, Noogie, Dan, a bunch of streamers. And then one resource that is more, well, maybe not talked about as much, but is PoE Ninja, or just other characters, other players that are, better than you, or at least, people that you can trust. So, I like to yoink from Dan and Ben and whatnot. Um, Worth pointing out here, I mean, I'm just gonna drill it in now. You might not like to hear it, but generic builds are good for a reason, right? They don't need gear. They Sorry, I just got a message in game. I should log out. One sec. All right, back to it. All right, so yeah, generic builds are good. They have no gear requirements, and they're good for a reason, right? When you league start, you have nothing, and so when you have nothing, your build options are limited. So that's why you're going to see a lot of seismic trap, toxic rain. I think I actually have a list here somewhere. Yeah, I do. So seismic, cold dot, bone shatter. I'm just going to list them off: rage vortex, DD ignite, EA ballista RF, chaos dot, poison concoction, spark, stuff like that. They're good for a reason. They don't need a million different pieces of gear. You don't need like a Starforge to play, a lot of a build like this, right? However, whatever build you do, I'll mention this now. If you are looking to play a new skill, though, this is my advice. I have tried new skills. This has tried new skills. There is a way to make them work. There is a way to make it safe. So play whatever build, but know what you can swap into. So as an example, so there's two suggestions here. One is mean, one is not. One is nice. So the first thing is this made a build for crackling land, so more like a build theory crafting idea, like a theory crafting video. But he did have a backup, which is why he made the video, because that build was similar to Arc. Similarly, Winter Orb, that build ended up being insanely overpowered when it came out. But even that build, which was OP, he was planning on swapping to BV if things didn't work out. It had similar scaling. It was they were both scaling elemental damage. They both had heralds. They were both similar same ascendancy. So yeah, have a backup plan. That's my tip. That's my pro tip. Whatever build you decide to play, though, have a good leveling build to go with it. You're gonna spend. It's gonna make day one a lot easier. So I've just got some leveling builds down there below. Again, brand, poison concoction, helix, wintertide brand for cold dot, spark, etc. Have a good leveling build. All right, next slide. So speaking of that day one early leveling, practice. Now, I don't overdo it. If you're competitive, if you have like the goal to be the first, obviously you're gonna need to do a lot of practice. But if you're like me, you just want to have a good, you just want to have a good weekend coming up, right? You just want to have a good weekend. It is worth doing a refresher, but don't feel pressured to do that. So when I say refresher, I mean Act 1, Act 2. Literally just log on, get your keybinds, get familiar with the flash system again. It does help a little bit that with that panic, that day one panic. When you're figuring out what gems to get, blah 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 blah. Regardless of whether or not you decide to practice, though, what I do recommend is knowing what gems and links and gem colors you're gonna need. Usually, a good PUB will have all this like in the notes and in the links and everything. I know this does at least. But if not, just literally whip out a notepad and just write down. You need as an example, right? You might need blue, 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 green. Like if this is something that matters to you, like if it's important, just make a mental note of that. Write it down on a notepad or something. Just have it on the side so you know to pick that up. You know to prioritize it. You know to check the vendors for it. It will help a lot. Just getting that basic stuff like that down. In terms of just real quick notes to go faster for my time racing in PoE, I'll just tell you now, don't full clear, right? Especially not like the bad zones, There are good zones to spend a lot of time in, but generally speaking, most zones you just want to get through. Focus on magic packs. Little known fact is magic monsters give you the most XP. That's why the best leveling zones typically have lots of blue packs. Think of your blood aqueducts, those side bits, they have guaranteed blue packs. The corners in Chamber of Innocence, the ends of each of the docks in Act 3, they all have blue packs. That's why they're good, because blue monsters magic monsters give the most XP relative to, time. Don't spend time doing nothing, hide out as lava. If you have to do, you don't have to be insanely efficient, but just make sure you're doing something. Just make sure you're like clearing a zone, just farming XP, as long as you're doing something. And don't loot everything, which is the next slide, because a filter will help with this. So you can get on the next slide. This. So obviously, never sync filter blade. Really handy tools. Whichever filter you use, though, I can give you some advice. But yeah, you obviously have these filters updated at the start of each league, roughly a day or two before. So make sure you've got that. What I like to do, though, to go to the next level is you can do this in Filter Blade. It's probably easier. I'm old. Don't judge me. But I do it, I just do it with a text editor. But just some simple additional highlighting for things like if you're a caster, right? Scepters. If you're a melee build, you might want to highlight two-hand weapons. If, in my case, I'm probably going to league start Toxic Rain Pathfinder, I'm probably going to want to do bows, like fast bow bases, so I can get that +2 bow maybe while leveling, or that +1 bow while leveling. The other thing is you probably are going to need to craft a little bit at the beginning, probably with essences. So you're going to need bases to craft on. So knowing what bases you need, things like full dragon scale, that's the armor and evasion base. Things like if you're evasion ES, you might want a carnal. Things like that is good to know, and what you can do, right? Again, this is kind of advanced, but it is nice if you are struggling with early gearing, is knowing what item levels you need. Because obviously nobody's going to have access to 86 gear, item level 86 gear at the beginning, right? But the tier 2 mods are actually perfectly serviceable and most likely what you're going to want to use and what you're going to craft on at the beginning of the league. So highlighting between 72 and 77. 77 is tier 2 spell suppression on a chest. 72 is tier 2 resistance on armor pieces. Just things like that. And focusing on that yellow map tier gear progression is really good. So yeah, you can look that up on Craft of Exile, the item levels you need. Like I said, just if you just want to do a blanket item level highlighting thing, look up 77 because that's going to be how you get into red maps, crafting that gear. All right, next slides. So speaking of actually gearing, you've probably seen a few PUBs. You know, if you have been looking at builds, and obviously they have all the gear in there already. They might have a couple of uniques. They might have all the flasks rolled correctly, all the flasks active, yada 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 yada. That's not realistic for day one, right? Realistically, what you're gonna have in Axe is literally just four links, life, and res. That's pretty much it. I've got down here Zizaran's 300 life per act roll. That's a nice rule of thumb for life. And I do mention getting kept life and res here. I think it's in another slide. Yeah, it's a slide down below. So I'll go more about like getting that gear, but just to manage expectations about what you're actually going to have day one, just in case you've forgotten and you're used to, you know, you've logged on recently and you've got your like 6 link crazy build and you've forgotten what it's like to play day one. Um, then obviously early mapping. This is actually interesting. Something I've noticed. I'm just going to go off on a rant here, but most builds will recommend spell suppression. But through scouring the internet, looking at snapshots on PoE Ninja, I actually realized almost no builds in the entire game for the first 3 days actually managed to get spell suppression cap because they made it so hard to get. They all want it and they're all progressing. It's really fascinating to watch. Day one, they have none. Day two, they have like 30, 40. Day three, they might have like 50 plus. Very few builds were actually capped. But that does mean you have to constantly work towards it. But just don't expect to be spell suppression capped in white maps, maybe even in yellow maps. And then obviously, you know, if you do want to fall back on the basic defense, obviously determination, grace, start rolling your flasks, get a 5 link in early maps. That's pretty much your goal there. And then for reds, by the time you're actually farming like T16s, you are really gonna want to have spell suppression cap or at least close to it. Again, determination, grace, pantheons. By this point, you should have them unlocked for your, you know, scuffed ailment immunity with the Brighton King Pantheon and the Garokan Pantheon for shock. And then your flash should have enkindling orbs and all that. I mean, instilling orbs, and you should be working towards a 6 link. So, next slides is. So, like I said, this is the meat and bones. This is all the tips that I have. I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but this is everything I wrote down. So, oh yeah, by the way, I mean tips. I don't know if you get the joke. Pepega credit tip. Uh, use your currency early to progress. So obviously, you can spend currency now, right? Instead of saving that alchemy, instead of saving that chaos, instead of saving those fusings, you can get a 4 link, craft some decent gear, go faster, and get through the campaign quicker. And that will get you to the Atlas, get you to those money-making methods earlier. The only time I would recommend hoarding chaos while leveling is if there's a specific thing you need for your build that you know you'll be able to get that will be accessible. Like let's say you wanted a Sinvictor's axe, right, for Bone Shadow. You probably could afford one by the time you hit maps, especially if you're lagging a little bit behind, so there's time for those items to exist. So you might want to generate a few Chaos Orbs, which is why I do have Chaos Recipe on this tip slide, but you have to be careful because time is money. And if you spend too long picking up gear, sorting it, it's actually going to be bad for you. So if you are going to do that, I recommend having tabs to organize it, you know, with jewelry and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, obviously people say it's a bait. It kind of is. But if you need that, like I said, if you need that 5 to 10C unique item, you know you'll be able to get it because it will be available. It can be worth doing the Chaos Recipe. But generally speaking, we don't, especially not necessary, obviously. Um, So obviously there's lots of powerful vendor recipes and vendor checks. If I had have prepared more, I would have had a full list for you. But just to go over them briefly, obviously you've got your rustic sash whetstone weapon craft for melee. You've got your rare ring. Also, you've got your magic rare white ring for flat spells. A little known recipe that Ziz told me to bring up is the +1 recipe. So it's actually I'll just Google it here, but I believe it's 40 quality of a gem tag, right? So let's say you've got a stone golem with 20 quality, which is a physical gem, and then maybe you've got another physical gem like Blade Fall, which is 20 quality. If you have that, it doesn't have to be 20 quality, it just has to add up to 40. And then you vendor that. Are you still eating this? Do you know if it's like a right.
There.
Oh.
What?
So do you know the rest of the recipe? I think it's like an alt or an orc or something.
Oh, okay. So you need a
What?
white wand, one alteration, and then total of 40
Yeah,
quality with a tag.
yeah,
So even if you
yeah.
have 10 gems with a little bit of quality lightning tagged, or 2 20 quality lightning tag gems, they just need to total to 40 quality. And it works
Beautiful.
on
Yeah.
helmet as well, and it works on scepter. Does not work on shield.
Saved, saved. Thanks, Iz. But yeah, so a lot of the gear that I looked at early for this talk, like a lot of the day 1 to day 2 gear that I looked at, was basically just a +1 weapon with a craft. And that will actually get you to red maps. So that craft is really, really, really good. Not many people know it, which is why Ziz told me to say it. So thanks, Ziz, for the assist there. He also mentioned that I should talk about capping resistances. So obviously that's all you need to do getting through the campaign. But a tip that a lot of people don't know about is you can basically, especially we found this out on Ruthless, but you can get by with very basic gear. Even just crafting using the bench, the one transmute orb craft that everybody starts with. Everybody has this craft. The only problem is you have to be level 10 to actually equip the gear. But everybody has this craft, and you can use this craft at league start. If you go to your hideout, go to your bench, and you can craft on white gear, and it's a 20 resistance craft. So just that craft alone will actually get you through the campaign. But you don't actually need better gear than that. So that's a really important recipe or a really important bench craft that you should be using. But if you do, if you maybe you don't take if you don't help Alira, maybe you don't have any res on your ascendancy at all. Maybe you're just scared of getting frozen. Putative Elements is actually a really nice way to handle resistances as well, giving you that ailment immunity. So it's another thing you can do because you're not going to have the insane armor scaling that we have later on from auras. The other thing I'll mention is overleveling. So I actually find that the time you spend overleveling will pay out later. It's not as fast. Like you're not going to be beating Ben or Tai Tai by overleveling, but you are probably going to go faster overall yourself because being weak, being like if you ever feel like you're struggling, that's a good sign that your gear needs to be better, your levels need to be better, you need more passives. So I actually do recommend overleveling. I do this every league, and clearly it works for me. You know, I'm not like that slow. So, but these are the zones that I recommend overleveling in. So you've got Northern Forest in Act 2, the Docks in Act 3, Chamber of Innocence in Act 5. There's basically nowhere to really overlevel in Act 4 that I like. But if you have to, push comes to shove, there's the lake and there's the calm zone, but I don't recommend it. Just push through, get to Act 5, it's much better. Ashen Fields in Act 7, Harbour Bridge in Act 8, Blood Aqueduct and Foothills in Act 9. And then the Act 10 zones you usually don't do, but there's Desecrated Chambers, um, Reliquary, and Ossuary. I don't recommend them, but you know they're not horrible. Also, Foothills. The reason I have this down as well is that there's a really good tip. This is more of a solo self-found thing, but maybe hell, I mean, you could still utilize this in trade. As a lot of you probably know, the helmet, what's it called again? Devouring Diadem. is used in a lot of builds these days. It helps with mana because you spend energy shield instead, and it helps with reservation because you can fully reserve all your auras, right? This is a very popular helmet in the current meta. This comes from Katarina. A way to start working towards your first Katarina is actually to abuse this tech, right? So what you do is you go to the foothills. Foothills can spawn Betrayal, it can spawn Bestiary, it can spawn Delirium, right? We're focusing on Delirium, Betrayal here, but Delirium is also good to keep an eye out for if you need cluster jewels. But you can actually just farm the zone. You don't even have to go full degen here. And anytime you get Betrayal, you do it, right? So instead of farming Blood Aqueducts, farm Foothills. But if you want to go to that next level, if you want to, cosplay as Ben, you can actually reset the zone, and whenever you get a mission, it will pop up, right? You'll actually get like a quest notification on the right side, hand side of your screen. And you can keep doing this. Not everyone should do this because it's gonna like brick the servers, right? So only the god gamers do that. But it will allow you to force Betrayal repeatedly, which is a really good way to get started on your Betrayal board. The reason I do recommend this, the reason I think this is not cooked, is because you also get veiled gear. So you'll see at League Start, a lot of the best players will have things like Endurance Charge on kill from an unveiled ring or something. Or they'll have Onslaught already on their boots, or Freeze or Chill Immunity, or some pretty, or +2 gloves, or +2 helm, or trigger unlocked already, right? That's how they're doing it. That's how they're getting that veiled gear early. It's from Foothills. So I feel like I had to mention that. Even though it is pretty degen, like I said, you don't have to go full degen. You can just go through the zone, farm it, and whenever it spawns, do it. Now, talking about mapping. So obviously, when you are done with the campaign, you're getting into the Atlas, you're going to want to unlock passes, right? They're insanely overpowered. It's amazing. Atlas is great. As far as getting through the Atlas goes, there's the 3-to-1 map strategy. So you can 3-to-1 maps. I don't actually believe I think they actually changed this recently, by the way. But when you 3-to-1 maps now, it's not just a connected map. It actually just up tiers to the next tier. I believe they changed that at some point. I'm not sure when. It's any
It's
map
any
above
map
now.
above
Yeah,
now. Yep.
yeah. So the 3-to-1 recipe is very, very, very powerful. So, and then obviously Kirak is insane as well. So usually what you'll see a lot of the top players do. So this is like, if you're curious, like, what do I actually do at League Start with my Atlas, right? I hear a lot of people ask that, like, what do I do with my Atlas? Shaping nodes, essences for crafting, and Kirak. That is usually what you'll see a lot of people do. The essences will give you that bit of gear that you need to get through the Atlas. It'll get you that get you started on that suppression. And the shaping nodes and the Kirak nodes will it'll like speed up your Atlas progression in insane amounts. You can drop it later, although most people, these nodes are so powerful that even in-game Atlases with like thousands of maps in their stash still run the shaping nodes. They still the only thing they do tend to respec is Kirak, but that's after they've completed the entire Atlas, because Kirak gives you like 10 maps, dozen maps or so every single time you get a mission. So it's really, really powerful. If you are after extra currency, like if you are after extra currency, figure that out on your own, obviously. But some strats that work for me is expedition and heist. Heist is really easy because you can just take that node at the beginning that gives you the extra lockers, and then expedition's really good. But that's like a full-on strategy. But it's like insane currency. It's always been insane currency. It'll probably continue to be insane currency just because of Tujen alone. So, right. Final slide, Mr. Zizaran. The new league mechanic. So this is more of a funny note to end on. So this is my advice for the new league mechanic. This applies to. It's funny that this is AFK now because I'm about to roast him. So is it good? I like to look at Grimro. Grimro basically does this for a living. His job is basically to tell you how to get the most out of the new league mechanic. So if you want to know if the new league mechanic is good, I'd keep an eye out for Grimro's videos. As far as how rippy it is, I like to watch for Zizaran rip clips. Usually, every league, I'll get linked a clip or two from Ziz or other streamers, and they'll tell me what's dangerous about it. As an example here in this slide, you can see Zizaran's clicking on a metamorph, and then he's dying. So now I know Don't do that organ, right? Uh, which obviously leads to me, and this is my shameless plug. If you want to watch me avoid all the new content in the new league, watch me, Alter 4. But yeah, anyway. Wait, what? Anyway, all right. So, next slides is so that is the lesson. It's short and sweet. Hopefully, you learned something useful. Hopefully, but is there any questions? Is there any questions from chat? Because I'm happy to just sit here and talk about League Start. Obviously, I could talk about League Start for ages. What's he doing? Can you talk more about spending currency to make currency? Yeah, sure, mate. So the reason is that the best way to make currency is to get to your end game point of making currency. So if I told you that you could make 2 to 5 divines an hour, you probably wouldn't believe me, right? But that is your end game goal, right? Like you get through the atlas, you get your build operational. That's how much currency you should be generating. You're not going to be generating that at the beginning. So the goal is to go from here to there. That's how you make the most currency, going from here to there. So that's why spending currency early will pay out dividends later, because you're accelerating that progression, going from the beginning to the end. I think someone asked me why not Raider for Toxic Rain. I actually looked at this. Raider, Pathfinder, and Champion are all insanely good. The differences are basically just the ascendancy. Like literally, Raider is easier to get suppression and very, very fast. Pathfinder is actually better, but entirely reliant on flasks, which you might not like. And then Champion is really, really tanky, but lacks a lot of the speed and recovery and stuff that the other builds get. Why is the audio so bad? Does my voice sound bad? Oh no. I actually did try to improve the audio, but we didn't have enough time to do an audio check, like a proper audio check, because yeah, it's on Discord too. I mean, it is what it is. Can you unbutton one button? No, that's too much. That's too much. That's too much. Whoa. Should I league start Deadeye LA? My opinion on LA. Now, this goes back to the slide earlier, but it's not going to be as good as the generic league starters. Why? Because Lightning Arrow is gear dependent, right? It's a fantastic build, but it's very gear dependent. It's also quite squishy, which means that you're going to have to invest either more into defense than you would like, or just ignore defense and die. That's fine though. I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't play LA. Live your dream. It is actually very good, and I can highly recommend it based off Havoc. But just be aware that it isn't one of the recommended league starters. Like it isn't one of my builds that I would say is going to get you through the Atlas easy. It's going to be harder. That's totally fine though. That's totally fine though. If that's you can make it work. It's been done. It's been done. It is viable. So why not league start EA? Just want to try Toxic Rain. Honestly, it looks very good. What are the shaping nodes you mentioned? Right. The shaping nodes are a wheel at the very beginning of the atlas. They're in that quadrant at the beginning, that first like chunk. It's shipping the skies, mountains, seas, and something else. But they basically up tier a map that drops. The reason they're very powerful is, you know how I just said you can 3-to-1 a map to get a higher tier map, right? Well, imagine having 100% chance to up tier a map. That's basically 3-to-1ing everything. Basically, it's tripling your map sustain. Tripling. Right, think about it, right? Because you would have to drop 3 tier 15s to get 1 tier 16. Like, think about how insane that is. So, that's why you see people rush that. Are there any div cards you target? There used to be, but Tabula is no longer king. Usually you want to get a 4 or a 5 link armor evasion chest or something similar, something with suppression. And so Tabula is no longer king. It's kind of bait these days, and certainly not worth farming the div card for. You can use a Tabula, but I certainly don't recommend farming for the cards in Blood Aqueduct. And they also removed the bow card in Foothills, so early on there's not too many div cards I recommend targeting in the campaign. In the Atlas, there is though. In the Atlas, look out for chains that bind. Look out for the obliteration card. Look out for six link cards. You know, the porcupine. That those will sell well, or you can just like hoard them and try to work towards them if you can.
A really nice tip worth mentioning as well is that Kirak missions will sometimes have find a full stack of divination cards. So if you see that on a map that has chains that bind, you have a pretty good chance of getting a full six link just from one map.
That is also the best way to get lab unlocked as well. The yellow Kirak missions, because you're going to get like a bunch of missions, and usually one of them is a labyrinth. So it's good for unlocking Uber Lab. Someone in chat mentioned as well that you recommended a tabula. I will just say right now, this is IMO.
I
This is
don't.
in my opinion. Or apparently, either way, like if somebody says something different to me, what I'm saying here isn't gospel, right? We have different ways of playing the game. I'm not telling you how to play the game. Just some advice, right? Just some friendly advice. You can take it or leave it, right? It's not like facts. I'm not factually saying, that you should never, ever, 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 ever grant a tabio. There might be a situation where your build really benefits from a six link. Yeah, or you could just drop a tabula and then you should probably use it, right? If you just have one. When do you plan to do Uber Lab? Pretty early these days, but that's mostly because you can kind of mechanically outplay Uber Lab. I generally want 5k life and enough armor to avoid getting one shot to the slash. How do I figure out how much an item is worth? At Mathel, I'm just kidding.
Oof.
So if it's a unique item, extremely easy, right? Just literally look up the item on PoE Trade. Usually, you want to search for a recent listing, an online listing, and you want to scroll down a little bit. You want to go to the middle, right? At the if it's a rare item though, it's honestly a learning process. To this day, I mean, I've been playing this game for like 10 years, and I have not figured out how to price check a rare item automatically. Like I like if you show me a rare item, I can't tell you how much it's worth. It's gonna depend, right? It's gonna depend on the market. So just look up similar items, not the same, but similar items, and you'll eventually figure it out over time. Hell, you can always just price it and then go from there. Like worst case scenario, you sell something too cheap. You'll have learned at least that item was probably more valuable. Also, I think this is. What are you doing?
Hi. Here we could end on that question.
Oh yeah, is it time?
That was perfect. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for taking time out of your day and teaching us loads of League Start tips and tricks. For those that like the recipes and stuff that Steele talked about earlier, I've made a short video that'll be up tomorrow. That's like a 3-minute
Beautiful.
video with all the recipes. And
Beautiful.
make sure you go check out Steelmage at twitch.tv/Steelmage.
Only if you don't want to watch the new league mechanic though.
Yeah, I'll go die to it.
Yeah, thanks, sis.
All right. Thank you so much. Sub to both our channels if you liked the video. But more importantly, try to die less than I do.